then God created himself a veil. And if it was removed the veil, everything would?
As far as that is.
The only way everything else can depend on the light of God is if God is within all.
Nothing that we can say can actually encapsulate the magnitude of God. When we say God is the most merciful, these are just ideas that we can prescribe to a much greater standard than we understand.
But bouncing off that, so what I believe is that God is time.
Now it gives license for atheists to simply say that they can negate God because the universe and time by extension are eternal things. So there is no need for a God at all.
So my point is this. He raised a lot of historical points, you understand? And one thing I've realized is a lot of Muslims, my people, try to reply back to him.
Okay.
But nobody's actually hitting the points that he's making.
Okay.
One of them being, where is the historical evidence that this place used to be a trading center?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a trading center. It's in the middle of the desert. And he also brings up hadiths from, real hadiths where, and also historical references from Ibn Khaldun and many other Islamic experts, how, about Ibn Zayd, I think his name is, the guy who destroyed who at some point...
the Dul Khalasa or something else?
Huh?
The Yemeni Kaaba?
I'm talking about the Kaaba in Mecca. So at some point it was literally demolished.
Oh yeah, in 681.
Yeah, so
yeah.
But then the thing is, he raises up really good questions, and I feel like no one is talking about it. Everybody's basically focused on Ishmael and Hagar coming to the desert. But still, how come you're not really focusing on the Islamic historical narrative? That's what I think.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can bounce off that, but that's something I've discovered.
This is not an area that I have looked into extensively. I don't know what Dan Gibson or Jay Smith had to say about this, but ultimately, for example, I understand that there are hadith that talk about Mecca essentially being the city in which, like Adam, for example, settled in, and the city in which Abraham and Ishmael came and built the Kaaba. So that would imply that archaeologically it's a very old city. It's like already 5,000 or 7,000 years old. But then it doesn't really look like a 7,000-year-old city. We have examples of those, and most of them are abandoned. So the narrative suggesting that Mecca was a metropolitan area before the advent of Islam does not appear to be congruent with what you see in history. Do you have any understanding of Mecca at any point before the pre-Islamic period being some kind of like central hub of commerce and trade, or a place of religious significance where people from around the world would come to go around the Kaaba, or just like a localized area in the desert, like you have many of those that are elsewhere in the world?
At this point, for me, everything I believe is based on faith.
Okay.
There is nothing that I can literally pinpoint any historical facts that I can tell you this is how things were. Right, so that's what I think. But when it comes to the whole concept of Abrahamic religion, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, me personally, I have a lot of questions, especially things pertaining into the Islamic religion itself.
Okay.
You understand? But I recently started practicing Sufism.
Okay.
And Sufism, basically, I practice something called Wahdul Wujud, which is the understanding of the oneness of all, that God is within all and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. But so you as a Christian, when you talk about the concept of, I want to learn more about the concept of Jesus and God and.
Sure.
So when you say, okay, give me your concept of God first before we move on to Jesus. What is God to you?
I mean, just very, very simply, the greatest conceivable being, the author of all things, the everlasting, the eternal, something that is completely outside of the created order, but in the same way, through God's omniscience, all-knowingness, and all-presentness, He is still somehow very real, even in the created order. But I think just very, very simply, the greatest conceivable being, the greatest idea that your mind can even like fathom, and potentially even greater than that.
All right, so okay, is God out? So here's a question for you: where is God?
So God isn't. I would say that God is not physically based. right?
It's not physically. Okay.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that.
So if you want to put God in a location, for example, if you ask like a regular Sunni Muslim, they'll say, oh, he's above his throne, and then they'll point upwards as though he exists in a plane of reality that is only vertically upwards from where we are. I think that's nonsensical in that if you literally put God in a box, even if the box is outside of reality, then like who determines the confines of the box? Is God a prisoner to his box, or is God simply everything that there is?
So you think God is everything that there is?
Everything that there is. Now, with the Sufi understanding, you can see God in nature, in creation. I say that you can see the works of God in nature and creation. You can see the image of God in humanity, in the way that we have emotions, we're rational, we can construct things, develop ideas, turn things that are in our minds to reality. But as far as God physically or in some kind of way being the tree and the human beings, I don't fully think so. There's a distinction between the created order and what God is.
Can you know? Okay, I agree with you on that one.
Okay.
As a Sufi, we believe that God, for example, God is not the tree, but if God is basically God is working through the tree, or in other words, God is within you.
Okay.
And every minute, every second, you are experiencing God.
Okay. As far as the tree, God is working through the tree. Do you mean that God is inhabiting the tree in some way? His power is inhabiting the tree and causing it to bear fruits, or the tree is an extension of the creative order that emanates from God? Like, which way do you see it? Is God in the tree making it bear fruit, or is the tree just a work of God?
Oh, this is how I see it. When I think of God, I think of motion. Okay? Because you can't have motion without creation. And you can't have creation without God. Because in the Bible, God says, when he was creating, the Spirit of God hovered. For there to be creation, God has to make a motion first. Because when he hovered above the waters is when he began to create.
Okay.
Are you with me so far?
Okay.
So that being said, something else that's aligned with motion is time.
Okay.
You can't have motion without, so you can't have time without motion.
You don't have time
without motion.
As in, like, things have to progress. There has to be some kind of like animation in the universe.
Yes.
Okay.
If everything is, for example, if everything is stagnant and not moving, there's no motion, there's no time.
Okay.
There's nothing.
Or time comes to an end. There's like an understanding somewhere in the scientific realm that have you heard about the heat death of the universe?
Yeah.
At some point, they'll stop being reactions. The universe will come to an even temperature all across the entire cosmos or whatever, and at that point things will start to die, supposedly. But I feel so far.
So everything, okay, following from that, everything has its own time. When time stops for you, doesn't mean time stops for me. The same way when time stops for our planet, doesn't mean it stops for other planets. If time stops for our universe, doesn't mean it stops for other universes. You understand? So time is always there. And we experience time at different levels. For example, let's take a fly. A fly lives for 20 days. But 20 days for a fly is eternity. Now, there's something called God time. So God, according to the Bible, God is the first and He's the last. And basically, He's the first hour and He's the last hour. Everything in between is just experiencing God within.
Okay, but what I would say, just the understanding of that is that I would not say that time applies to God. I think like some of our earlier theologians, forgive me, I don't know the name, but there's this understanding that God is eternally in the present. There is no past for God. There is no future for God.
You know why? Because He's the first hour. There's nothing beyond that.
But then when you say the last hour,
and
you imply an ending.
No, I don't imply. Basically, He is the beginning and the last, the beginning and the end. So just because you say it's basically figurative words.
Absolutely.
So it's not
everything that we use to describe God is figurative. Because nothing that we can say can actually encapsulate the magnitude of God. When we say God is the most merciful, the most gracious, these are just ideas that we can prescribe to a much greater standard than we understand. But the words themselves don't fully encapsulate what it means for God to be the most merciful.
True. Now, but bouncing off that, so what I believe is that God is time.
I don't agree with this. Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine. We're good. We're good.
You can pick up yours
Okay.
as well.
All right, no, that's fine. I personally don't agree with this, but please go ahead. No, it's fine. We can pass it around.
Cool,
if it's
cool.
okay.
Now you can just hold it. It's fine.
No, go for it.
So I believe God is time. So when we say God is time, because you cannot, according to the Bible and according to the Quran or any scripture I've come across, I don't think there's a time when God created time.
Okay.
But one thing that we know is time started with the motion of God. So if God never made that motion, nothing would have happened. Creation would have never taken place. And I'll give you an example. I don't know. I've read this from the Hamatika. I've also read this from a hadith that says that one time Moses asked God, like, how come God you don't sleep? How come slumber never befalls you? And God said to Moses, Moses, go grab yourself a cup of water. Right? Moses did so. He sat down. He was holding the cup of water, and God put a slumber over him. And everything, the cup that he had fell, and he started to spill water on himself. Then Moses woke up, and then God told Moses, if I fell a slumber, everything stops.
Okay.
Everything goes zoom.
Okay.
So in my ancient religion, the Somalis, the Waqiyah, we used to believe.
There's gonna be a car behind you, yeah?
We used to believe that God is something called Wada.
Okay.
Wada means the mover, the motion.
Yeah, the prime mover, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And now if God is the prime mover,
Yep.
and that everything that moves, okay, I'll show you from a different perspective, right? We are created out of light. Do you agree that?
In the Islamic understanding, or
What about Christianity?
the dust of the earth?
All right, so there's no, what's the soul made of?
So the soul is not a material thing. The soul directly emanates from God. So it doesn't have like a bunch of physical properties or even like non-physical properties. It's a direct emanation from God.
Can we say the soul is energy? A source of energy?
Well, I mean, it depends how you define energy. But
Well-
I would say that it's a direct emanation from God.
What is energy?
So people will describe
I
it.
want to know your understanding of energies before I tell you
I
mine.
have never actually looked into a definition of the word energy, but it appears to be some kind of intangible force that exists in the universe that just gives some kind of motion or purpose to other things.
Okay, good one. Now,
Well, that's completely made up.
I mean, yeah, okay, cool. So what I believe is that energy is basically heat, fire, light. You can't have energy without heat. You can't have heat without energy.
Okay.
You can't have light without heat, and you can't have heat without energy. It just goes. You can't have one without the other.
Okay.
You as a human being, there is something that keeps you alive.
Okay.
And that thing that keeps you alive also keeps you warm. Your body, you have your blood, you're warm-blooded.
Okay.
Secondly, the heat within you gains energy from the sun. You understand? You won't live without the energy of the sun. Okay? That being said, now, if we go back to the source of who God is, let's say that if everything moves,
Yep.
the planet, the cells in your body,
Yep.
everything that we know has motion.
Okay.
And that motion depends on other source of energy. And it keeps going. One thing depends on the other. Then what does everything else depend on? It must depend on another source of energy, which is the primal mover.
Sure.
So is that if the only way that primal mover, the only way everything can be dependent on that primal mover is if that primal mover is within all.
Okay, so from my view, I have no problem with the whack understanding of the prime mover or the first cause, or what you just described. I have no issue with that in particular. However, I then don't believe that just because God is the maintainer and the cause of motion in the universe, that then befits making him time. Because I would say that time is a created thing. that time is changed over a period.
One question, sorry.
Yep.
Where is the evidence in the Bible that God created time?
So, essentially, within the Bible, right? We God is called the everlasting, the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. Now, from these the understandings of who God is, right? Like, He sees the beginning from the end. He's the Ancient of Days. From these like scriptures, we can extrapolate and say that God is incredibly old, but old in a way where somehow, as the Bible says, He does not change. So something about God is unknowable by human beings, but also we have to come to the conclusion and the understanding that whatever causes us to be born, age, and die doesn't apply to God. And that thing is time, or the change caused by time.
Now watch this. When time causes change, how does that change occur? Through what? Motion.
It can be a number of things, but ultimately everything that is in the physical realm is built, born, or like emanated and then decays. But that decay doesn't apply to God.
But here's the thing though, I know it doesn't, but if God is the one causing the decay, if God is time itself, why would time itself decay?
Okay.
So, but the point is this, right? I'll make sure.
There's a problem with ideology for me.
Okay.
And that problem is you come across atheists who talk about the immortal universe, that it's always just been here. And then theists would say, oh, that's nonsensical. Something cannot just cause itself. But then, by your understanding, if God is time, then there's no problem for an atheist to say that the universe is eternal, because time is a component of the universe beyond just change. It actually like makes indents in the universe itself. So if you ascribe time to the essence, the eternal essence of God, then the atheist can just come here and say, you know what, the universe is eternal, and I believe that. That's fine.
Here's the thing with that though. When you say time, you are looking at time from a human perspective. Now, let me show you from a different perspective. You see, we experience time in different levels.
Yep.
For example, like earlier, okay, let's take your cells. Let's take your cells. Your cell decays earlier than you. Some cells die earlier than you. That means they are experiencing time which is different to your time.
Okay.
Number one. You yourself, you are experiencing time in a different form. If you travel from this planet to 100 light years away, my time will be different to your time.
Yep.
Right? Because the further you go from the earth, the more time slows down for me,
yep.
But you're still running time at normal rate.
Yep.
By the time I come back, I look more younger than you.
Yeah, like Einstein's atomic clock.
Okay.
When he put the clock on the Concorde and flew around the world, and the time on the Concordes were like a little bit slower than the actual clock he had sequenced to the clocks. Yeah,
100%.
Sure. Okay.
Now, picking up from there, when we say God is time, for example, when we say God is time, God is not the one going through the decay. He is that cause. For example, if I slapped you, for example, or if I hurt you, or if I did something to you, I'm not the one feeling that pain because I'm the causer.
Okay.
The same way, if God is the one that's causing motion, because for example, when we do movements, we use energy.
Yep.
And when we use energy, we also, what happens? We also, we also decay along the way.
Yeah.
The same way. So, but then it's God that's making me do that. You understand? So God is not. God is not having an effect on the motion that's going on within the universe because He is that. Number one. Number two. One thing that I have an understanding of God is that He is the source of all energy. Everything that burns, everything that lights, it's Him. All vibration, all movement, it's Him.
Okay.
So if I said God is within all, what I mean is time is within all. Because even your own there's a verse in the Quran that says God is closer to you than your jugular vein.
Yeah.
So if God is closer to me than my jugular, it means like I am literally experiencing God as I move on this planet.
Okay.
So that being said, God is the motion. He is the primal. He is the source of all motion. Yes, and He is time in that word. In other words, yeah.
So I literally agree.
Oh, one last thing.
Yep.
There's a hadith that says, Allah says, He talks to people and He says, "Do not curse time, for I am time."
I am time. Yes, I've seen that one as well. So again, up until we get to the point of calling Allah or God time, I agree with the ideologies that you're espousing. My only issue is these things that we are experiencing in the world are created things.
But brother, I
We
asked you a
cannot
question from the beginning.
ascribe
I asked you a
Allah
question.
to a
Sorry,
created thing.
I've asked you the question. I understand God created the motion. God is the one causing the motion of the sun and
But
the
that
moon.
doesn't mean that He is the motion.
Wait, I want you to tell me,
Yeah.
since time is motion, and motion began with with the movement of God's spirit from the beginning,
Right?
where does it say that God created time?
So
Because you never answered that question.
So I no, but I did in that. So that is an argument, right, to specificity. The Bible is not a book that describes to you the mechanisms that God used to create the physical world. But from like expressing this idea like philosophically, we can understand that time is a component of physical reality, and God is non-physical. So if we start ascribing physical things to God,
You see,
that
did
creates
you
an
say
issue.
time is physical?
Time is a component of the physical world.
How is time physical? Tell me.
No, time is a component of the physical world.
Component. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
So it's a part of it.
It's a part of it.
Yeah.
But it's something that you experience.
Yes, in the same. For example, everything that you can say about time, you can potentially say it about wind, right? But then we wouldn't say Allah is the wind.
But no, but the wind is being okay. The wind is moving, right? And the motion of the wind is being caused by.
Sure, everything
So
is being caused by
in
God.
so
but
in time, the wind moves. In time, so when I say in, because it's like fish, right?
Yeah.
When a fish is swimming within the sea,
Yeah.
the fish is not aware the fish is in the water, because that's its reality.
But yes, that has to do with like being like a rational being and understanding your environment, the components around the environment, and being able to compare with something outside of that environment, right? We don't know if fish have that ability.
Whether we know it or not, but think of yourself as take time as water,
Okay.
and you're swimming within this reality of water,
Yeah.
and everything for you looks normal, and you can't literally control what time does to you.
Yeah.
You have no control over that.
Okay.
Therefore, that being said, you can't say that, you can't compare the wind to time, because the wind itself is within that realm.
Okay.
So when I say you're in time, you're in it. But then the question, for example, I asked you a question again, and I feel like I know you tried, but I want you to literally think about it, right?
Where in the Bible does it say that
No,
God made time?
exactly. Now God, every time God creates something, said, "Let there be light, let there be this, let there be that."
Yeah.
So we can see creation being formed by God commanding it into being.
Okay.
Okay, but creation, for example, God starts with light.
Yeah.
Why does God start with light?
You can see that light is a fundamental part of our reality.
What does light use to burn?
So light itself doesn't actually burn, from my understanding. It's just a spectrum.
No, light burns. You can't have light without heat.
You can't have light without heat.
Yeah, as far as I know.
I mean, potentially, I can't think of an example where you can have light and heat isn't like a byproduct of that light. But sure, you can make that argument, okay? And
Okay, there's a hadith that I read
Yeah.
that says that when God completed his creation,
yes,
you see, God himself is the source of burning energy. The
Okay.
hadith says that if then God created himself a veil to put,
and if it was to remove the veil,
and it was removed
then
the
it
veil,
would burn
everything would.
as far as I can
And the light of God, we can't say light because he created light, but the light that we use is dependent on the energy of God itself.
see. Okay,
This-
fine.
and the only way everything else can depend on the light of God is if God is within all.
Ooh, see, now that's the issue. Why does God have to be within all for us to depend upon His light? Why cannot He be separate from His
depend on his
creation?
energy.
Yeah, but why must He be inside for us to depend on it? Like, surely God is so omnipresent and all powerful that even without Him being present in the physical reality, He can still cause the motions of the reality to work. I think you're limiting God and putting Him in that box.
No,
like I said before.
I'm not literally. Actually, I am grandifying God beyond the usual concept of.
I would say that. So, for example, as human beings, Doing something manually and automating it are two separate things. And in fact, it is more impressive to automate something than to do it manually.
Repeat that one more time, sorry.
Doing, as human beings, doing something manually, like tilling a farm or sewing clothes, right? It is actually more impressive to somehow manage to automate that process in a way where you don't need to be directly involved. That's how you increase economies of scale. That's how you make things faster. You make more of something. I would say that God is capable of automating His creation without needing to be in there.
All right, here's again. Let's pick up from there. When you're tilling a farm or you're sewing clothes,
Yep.
you are creating motion in that particular.
Well, I don't think you're creating motion, but you're using motion to carry out the action.
Cool.
Sure.
Or in time, you're doing that.
Yes, yes.
And that motion that you're making is dependent on your energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy is dependent on the sun and the earth and so on, and it keeps going. But at some point, we're gonna have to realize that, going back to the tilling stuff,
Yep.
that tilling that you're doing,
Yep.
you are there with it.
Yes.
You can't be outside of it because you are literally in the same
Sure.
surrounding.
Sure.
So if you take a car or if you take a little lamp, the one that uses gas,
Yep.
for that lamp to burn, the gas has to be within the box of the lamp.
Right.
Okay? There's a verse in the Quran that says, Allahu nur samawati wal arda. He is the light
Right.
of the heaven and the earth.
Yep.
And his light, look at this here. And his light is equivalent to a niche, right? And that niche is in what's it called now? It's equivalent to a lamp, and that lamp is within a niche, and that particular lamp is gaining an oil, right? Oil from an olive tree, which is neither from. The point is the source of energy that we receive from God, according to this ayah, from my understanding, is literally the thing that God uses the example of a lamp, and the lamp is using the energy source of God. So the energy source of God, the lamp is within the energy source of God. It's not out of it.
Okay. So again, this is fine, but the problem is if temporal time that we experience has a beginning point and then comes to an end, if Allah is that
Time is eternal.
okay, but that's a problem. Now the atheist can come and tell you that time is eternal, and for that reason, no need to believe in God.
But tell me, okay, you are temporal.
Yes, and so is time.
No. Your experience of time is temporal.
Sure thing.
The sun, even though it would live for billions of years,
Supposedly, eventually turn up.
experiences time compared to you. When you compare the time of the sun and your time,
Yep.
yours is like a blink of an eye.
In relation to the sun, sure.
Exactly. Your time compared to a fly or to an ant is a blink of an eye.
Sure thing.
Couple of days. Now, the way you experience time is temporal, but time itself is not temporal.
Okay, but again, if Allah was time, why then do things experience Allah differently? Why does the sun experience Allah differently to me?
Because that's just the way things God.
So are there multiple if Allah is time? Are there multiple understandings of Allah that are all correct?
Well, one thing that we all know is that according to the Waḥd al-Wujud is that all is one with God.
Okay.
Okay.
In a sense, in that God is the purveyor of all things, right? All things emanate from God, and God is the reason why things exist. Otherwise, without God, nothing would exist. In that sense, yes. Do you have a different sense of how all things are one in God?
Well, because God is time itself and time is eternal, we are experiencing time and time is within all.
Okay.
Therefore, so that's when I say God is within all, I'm talking about how we experience, because we are within time.
Okay.
And
so
time is within us.
Check this out, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, today I'm an atheist.
Okay.
Okay? I don't believe in God. I believe that the universe made itself and the universe is eternal. Am I wrong for this belief?
Repeat that one more time.
I'm an atheist.
Okay.
I believe that the universe created itself.
Created
There is no God.
There's no God.
And the universe is eternal. It's always been here and it'll always be here. So we don't need to rely on some daddy in the sky telling us what to do and what not to do.
So,
Am I wrong for this? According to your worldview.
well, the universe is not eternal.
Okay, but time is.
Time is, but
And time is a component of the universe.
No. The universe is within time, because the universe started at a point in time.
So time is eternal. It's always been here.
Everything happens within time.
But then, okay, so if time is eternal and time has always been here, but the universe came into being at some stage within this eternal time, what was occurring before the universe was here?
Well,
Because time has changed, right?
Okay,
What was changing?
Because what you're doing here is like you think that we are the only, our universe is the only universe. 'Cause
Okay.
back in the days, people used to think our planet is the only planet, and that God only is focused on us, blah, all that kind of stuff. But the point is this:
Is there a reason that you think that
what?
there are early? So from that understanding, are there an eternal number of manifesting universes that have been here for as long as time? Was there ever a period when time existed in some kind of stationary states and then later creation came in?
all right, here's the way I'm gonna.
Okay?
So here's the way I'm gonna explain
Getting
it to you.
busy.
Yeah. Here's the way I'm gonna explain it to you, right?
Because my position is that time is created by God.
Which you don't have evidence for.
No, I would say that if God is the only thing that's eternal, and God is not part of the created order, in the same way that God is not a tree, He's not the wind, He's not the grass, but He's the cause of it, He's not time.
Okay, can we not say that? Okay, going back to your question before I go there, right?
Okay.
So when we say the universe is all right. When let me just start from what I told you
Sure
earlier.
thing.
So when you die, time stops for you. When you were born, time began for you at a specific time.
Right, but wouldn't that just be
so the same way, our universe was born at a particular time, or a particular end time.
Okay,
But then the cause of our universe was caused by perhaps something else.
Okay.
We don't know yet, but something caused it.
okay,
Because nothing happens without a cause.
okay.
So, for example, if a sun, let's say a star is born through the explosion of another star.
Okay.
My friend. So the same way, I would say something kick-started our universe, but that thing doesn't necessarily have to be some being. You understand? It could be maybe another universe dying or another universe. Something kick-started it. But the point is this: our universe started at a particular time in time. So everything is within time. Our universe, if there are parallel universes, those parallel universes, and time is not measured in the way that you're measured on Earth. Time is experienced different in different worlds. So when you say, is there different realities, is there a different concept of God? I would say we all have one concept of God if we understand time, because there's only one concept of time.
Okay, so what I would say is that the discussion here. Huh? Okay.
Wait, pause. Oh, you're not a
Well,
all right.
Okay.
You want to
yeah. Wrap it up, or
wrap it up.
Yeah.
Have you got enough time, or it's just?
up to you guys.
I don't know how long it's gonna end, because
Okay,
it's a
wrap
good
it up.
conversation.
Yeah, wrap up.
About an hour-ish.
Yeah, that's about enough.
So wait, let wrap up first and then you wrap
Sure
up.
thing.
So here's the question I've asked the brother, and maybe you can also add your points to this. According to the Bible, the Spirit of God hovered above the face of the waters. When that happened, when that motion happened, that is when creation started. If there wasn't motion, there would not have been creation. So, and I said, without the motion of God, without the movement of God, there's no creation. Everything that decays, everything that changes, happens within motion. Nothing decays without motion, because to move is to use energy. For example, we are using the eternal energy of God. However, the way we use it is temporal. Because when we move around, we die, we decay. But God, if since God is that motion, God doesn't decay, He doesn't stop. He is the first and the last. He is the beginning and the end. That doesn't mean time ends for God. It just means like nothing ends without God, nothing begins without Him. You understand? We are in between. So in other words, like I said, you can't measure time without changes or motion. The same way, you can't have creation without motion, and you can't have God without motion. You can't have nothing without time. That's my conclusion.
Interesting conclusion, but I would completely, I guess, beg to differ with that. Like I did earlier. I don't understand the whole thing about we can't have anything without motion, or I just don't get it. So I will sadly have to differ with that and pass the mic to the next man.
Before you pass,
Right.
tell me
Yeah.
if the sun stopped,
Right.
if every motion in the universe stopped, would there be existence?
Okay, I think I get what you're
In the
trying to
physical
say.
world.
You're trying to talk about like the movement of atoms and how everything vibrates, and everything that vibrates and when something stops vibrating, it's basically dead, but nothing dies, because even if a human stops moving, when rigor mortis starts setting in, his molecules are still moving, and then he decomposes, and then the molecules transmogrify into something else. So at the end of the day, nothing actually stops.
I know, but if it did, would there be any time? Would there be any motion? Would there be any life?
Well, not life as you know it, I guess.
Because there's a theory that you were talking about earlier, the burning,
The heat death
the heat death.
of the universe.
At some point, the universe would end. Nothing, not even an atom would move.
Everything will be the same temperature, so no reaction can happen anymore.
That's just a theory.
Theory,
And
yeah, theory.
that's based on our observation of what it means to be alive. For human beings, being alive is something that can be observable. The moment something isn't observable, it means it's not alive. That's just human beings. So we're very subjective, and we look at things through our own lenses, which is extremely limited. That's just it.
By the way,
I pass the
if you're
mic.
gonna post this video, can you put it Somali Kona instead of my name?
Sure. Okay, I'll tell him. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, Somali Kona with so
Yeah,
and so.
okay, I think you know your name. All right. So to end it all off, guys. Good discussion, but a fundamental flaw, in my personal opinion, to the Islamic perspective or the Sufi perspective of Allah being time, is that this then gives license.
Did you say pseudo perspective?
Huh?
Did you say
The Sufi,
Oh, Sufi. I thought you said pseudo.
all the Islamic perspective, right? Is that now it gives license for atheists to simply say that they can negate God, because the universe and time by extension are eternal things. So there is no need for a God at all. I believe that time and everything that we see in our observable universe emanates externally from God, but God does not need to be those things. God does not need to be a human being, or be time, or be a tree, or be grass. God is God and has always been God. And God exists separate from the creation, but in some kind of tangible way, He can always interact with creation. Either it be through theophanies, like we see in the Bible with the burning bush, the pillar of cloud, whatever it might be, or in an incarnated form in the person of Christ. That's my view, at least. All right, we're getting there. Anyways, we have Hamza, we have Somali Corner.
Hamza Lawal, check my books out. Fiction-Hamza.com. Check it out. Get my books. Peace out.
Yep. But by the way, for everyone looking, this is how you have a nice agreement without yelling at each other. We present ideas. We don't agree. That's fine. We present our position and move along. Sunnis, learn from this.
The Sufi mentality.
Come on now. Come on now. Okay, awesome.